Okay, so I got a Steam controller today. I have in the post a nice little blue box. I've got it right here, and it was fairly nicely presented. It was I think it came with a little, what came with the controller, obviously, 2 Duracell batteries, and a little dongle for wireless capability. I plugged it in and messed about with it. You can see a video of it on the channel. I might even link. I will probably put a little tag here linking to it. So you can go watch that stream, or the archive of that stream. However, I just wanted to quickly read you a report that I wrote up of my experiences with the Steam controller. I'll cover my design gripes with it first. First of all, D-pad does not feel good. It is a hard click instead of a soft press like you're used to with a D-pad, such as those on the DualShock 4 controller or the Xbox One controller. This might be a purely preference thing for me, however it feels too large and too unwieldy compared to the D-pads of yore, which we're all used to by now. It does boast a second touchpad within it, as in inside of the D-pad itself is a second touchpad to the other touchpad on the other side. However, I am yet to find a game which actually uses that functionality. I might find one, which would be interesting. If anyone knows one, point it out. However, as of yet, not found one. Nonetheless, this does not feel like the best D-pad I have ever used, such as Nintendo or Sony D-pads, which are fantastic. However, it does feel somewhat better than the original 360 D-pad, which was an absolute nightmare. This is because it is much wider than the 360 D-pads, which reduces the probability of you accidentally hitting 2 directions at once with it, which was possible on the old 360 controller. However, it does that by making it much larger, which increases the travel time for your thumb. In a high-paced game, this is bad. Point number 2, there are 2 spine buttons behind the triggers. These are hard clicks again compared to the soft click of a trigger button. I keep accidentally hitting these buttons without meaning to, but that is probably because I'm not used to them yet. Given some time, I might get used to not accidentally hitting them, however it feels like the action on them is a bit too soft, so it's easy to accidentally click them despite them being hard clicks. The touchpad and the ABXY buttons on the controller are too far apart. The ABXY buttons are located very close to the centre of the controller, and your thumb could be on the very rightmost point of the touchpad in the game, which is a long space for your thumb to cover if you need to press those buttons. In a tense situation where you need to hit a button fast, such as those you might face in Hotline Miami, this will inevitably lead to you hitting the B button instead of the A button out of stress and distance. It's just a mental sort of issue where when you're in a high stress environment, such as you might find in Hotline Miami 2, you quickly dive for a button, and because it's just so far, you hit the wrong thing accidentally due to the distance. This is bad, but you could probably map the buttons to be in more convenient places, which is a big plus, I will say, about the Steam controller. It has an inbuilt system in Steam Big Picture mode for you to download community mappings, which is a very nice feature. This allows people to set up their own controller mappings, which they found to be very effective for the game, and to make them easily available to other users. Nonetheless, in a game with a lot of buttons you can map, you will inevitably need the ABXY buttons eventually, and may run into this issue of travel distance once again. Third point, build quality. The weight of it does not feel right to me. This is more of a personal preference thing, but a heavy controller feels nice and solid, and makes me feel like I am less likely to break it. The Steam controller does not have this. This does not have the nice heavy feel I look for in a controller, the nice weighty, well-built feel. In fact, I'm wildly unsure of the build quality of this controller, with the spinal buttons on the inside of the controller. Since they are hard clicks like a mouse, if you accidentally drop the controller, then it seems like you could easily break those buttons, which would be bad. Those buttons are actually part of the battery case for the controller. In fact, if I pick up the controller now, I can just quickly allow you to hear it. You press a little switch and it jumps out of position, and a big plastic sheet comes off. Those buttons are actually part of the battery case for the controller, and it is only a thin sheet of plastic with 2 little nubs sticking down, which hit the actual buttons which are inside. They look very easy to snap by accident. It's a very, very waif-like piece of plastic, and the nubs which hit the 2 spine buttons, which is what I'm calling them, I don't know if they have an official name, they're just 2 little bits of plastic sticking out. if you accidentally drop the controller or stand on it or sit on it or any other number of things, it seems like this could be very easy to break. It's a significant build quality issue that I am feeling will be one that many users run into in the future if this design is not iterated upon. Fourth issue, the appearance of the controller. The matte design into a shine towards the centre looks very cheap and nasty. It just does not look professional, it does not look nice. It looks like something that PS1 era Mad Cats would come up with. A nasty third-party controller for a system which you don't really want to be using. Okay, so here's my experiences from testing it out. I've tested it out a bit more since the stream archive that you may be able to see. I didn't publicise the stream very well. I just wanted to quickly get some basic recordings. I've tested it out a bit more, and here I am with my more expanded feelings. I tested it out with CK2 first. It worked fine with CK2. The only thing missing from the old mappings was, well, from the mappings that you have on a keyboard that is absolutely essential, was a speed up and slow down time mapping. The touchpad is responsive enough to work well for hovering around, however I do not recommend using it to actually click things, which some games allow. This is because actually clicking the touchpad, I'm on about the touchpad on the right here for what it's worth, actually clicking the touchpad makes you adjust the pressure of your thumb on it, moving the cursor. This can mean misclicks, which in a strategy game like Crusader Kings 2 could mean bad shit like accidentally white piecing instead of taking land. Instead, you should use trigger or shoulder buttons, which are usually mapped to the left and right click, depending on how the default mappings put things, which are mapped in a context-sensitive manner to react to what you do. Sometimes, however, I find that default mappings reverse left and right click, which is very confusing. In the future, Steam should make their default mappings be unified. It should always be left for left click, right for right click. It's a very messy system that we currently have. Like you'll see later when I talk about City Skylines, it is the reverse. Oh wait, Crusader Kings 2 is the reverse of left and right click. City Skylines is not. It's a very unusual situation there. Using the combinations of all the buttons on the controller, it was easy enough to click on guys, bring up the diplomacy menu and declare war or conduct diplomacy, then move over to my military tab and raise an army. I can move them about with relative ease once I'd figured out the controls. Outside of a few particular keyboard shortcuts I've become accustomed to, such as changing the speed of the game, which is not in the default mappings of the controller, pausing time is. That is something you can do. And changing map mode, it seems to be capable of doing CK2 just fine. Zooming in and out of the map is a bit rough on the default mapping since it requires repeated clicks of the buttons, however, the buttons that zoom in and out of the map, like the smooth experience of a mouse scroll wheel. However, these issues can probably be fixed by either you personally going into the mappings and changing them yourself, which you can do, or downloading a community button mapping, which is one thing, like I mentioned earlier, I really like about this controller. It seems like it is built for a community mindset. The community can make mappings and you can download them from a central hub of mappings. If this controller gets a community behind it, then I am confident that this will become a useful feature which will cover many games. If not, then it will be an absolute disaster and it'll be a shame, honestly. It will be a shame. All in all, call me impressed with how capable the Steam controller was with CK2. It could conceivably take the in-depth map-based strategy game to the sofa if you really wanted to. You'd probably run into issues of legibility with the text resolution at the kind of distance that you would be sat at from a couch instead of at the keyboard, but if you wanted to do it, you could really do it. However, it still feels far inferior to just using the mouse and keyboard, which allow a much smoother experience than the touchpad on the controller, due to the higher position of a mouse. But, as I said, if you want to do it, you can do it. It works fine with Crusader Kings 2, which I'm quite excited about. If games could be designed with that controller in mind in the future, then it could perhaps lead to bigger things. I then moved on to Hotline Miami 2. I spent a little less time on this game and did a little less with it. However, I feel like my report will show my experiences. This game is a bit rougher. The touchpad was a bit too imprecise for this game, which is a high action, high precision variety of game where you need to kill people or you will immediately die. And the touchpad, if clicked in a tense situation, would lock onto guys. Often the wrong guy. This last bit could probably be disabled somehow in the controller mappings, but is not as good as a default. But is not good as a default mapping. Really though, the touchpad just does not feel precise enough for quick-paced action, aiming, and gaming, which is necessary in this type of game. It seems clumsy at first, but I'm sure that is something that, given time and practice, you could get used to. But there will always be the issue of how close you are aiming with the actual touchpad compared to using a D-pad, which is what I would probably be more used to, a D-pad or a analog stick. It could conceivably fulfill what appears to be Steam's objective with the Steam Box and Steam Controller of moving titles, indie titles such as Hotline Miami, to the couch, which has been done with already with Hotline Miami by console gaming. Finally, I moved on to City Skylines. This was a game that was in the trailer for the Steam Controller, so I figured that this would be the best supported game for the controller out of those I owned. And in a way, it was. A lot of the buttons were mapped by default, giving a lot of versatility. You could do a lot with the controller in City Skylines. A lot of actions that you would like to be able to do, such as bringing up the little menu you would bring up to change things, such as whether you're looking at the pollution levels or the traffic situation in your city, you could do that on that controller, which was nice. However, the menu navigation did not feel natural or efficient despite that. All the things you need to click on in-game are very small, and that leads to problems with the Steam Controller touchpad, which is just not precise enough for some of the very small circles and buttons in-game that you need to click on. For example, if you want to build a building or place down, say, a police station, you need to click on the little circle in the menu of things at the bottom. It just does not feel precise enough to easily click those. You will spend extra time making sure you get precisely. The touchpad also did not seem very well suited to actually placing things down in your city, such as roads. Due to the imprecision, it was hard to actually line up roads to meet each other, and would take a few seconds of moving about to get the spot you want just right. This would be alright if you didn't need to place many roads down in the game. This is a city building game, so that was not the case. I tried to map an entire district, and boy was it tedious and imprecise. None of the roads really went where I would want them to go at first try, so it could lead to a lot of time wasted on a very easy process with the mouse and keyboard. This was not only an issue present in the road building, but also in zoning, which was very imprecise and very slow. If you want your city to not look like a horrific nightmare, such as those recorded in a recent video series, then this is just not the controller for you. This is not the way to play the game for you. It's not precise enough to really zone things cleanly, and if you like an actual mix of zoning within your city instead of zoning everything by big blocks, then you will find yourself spending a lot of time placing individual things down in individual areas. Basically, it will slow down any control freak from building their city in a time-efficient manner like me. I actually do like to build proper cities and city skylines, by the way, guys. It's something I do when I'm not just messing about and trying to look at new features. The camera controls were also mapped to the touchpad, which you could adjust by clicking it in. This sounds good, but in execution is again impractical and imprecise. This is due to the pressure you have to apply to the touchpad with your thumb, which can make your thumb just unstable enough to offset where you want the camera to be as you release the touchpad. It was in this game that I also noticed an issue with the touchpad that is present with every touchpad: temperature. The temperature of your thumb affects the responsiveness of the touchpad. When I was sitting in my room and just testing things out, my room was somewhat cold due to the heating not having turned on yet. I was also drinking a canned drink. and it had just come out of the fridge. This made the touchpad less precise when I used it after picking up my can to have a drink, which is a bit of a nuisance. The final issue I had in City Skylines was phantom clicking. This was a big issue, one that anyone watching a stream could also notice. Whenever I accidentally clicked up the spinal buttons on the controller, it would make actions outside of the game somehow. This included moving what my stream settings were up and down the menu, turning my stream focus from the actual game I was playing to random bullshit from old things that I haven't done in ages. When I finished messing about and closed all my game windows, I also noticed that a Facebook window had been clicked up by it too, and somehow it had gone to opening up some news article from the Facebook trending topics about the Kepler Space Telescope. It was nice of the controller to give me something interesting to read when I finished doing some serious gaming. However, it is a serious issue if the controller is doing actions outside of the game window, which I believe is a massive problem with the controller. They really should not be allowing the game controller to do anything outside of Steam if at all possible, and that should be the top priority of things that Steam should try and fix. You can absolutely mess up your computer if you accidentally open up things with the Steam controller while playing games, and you do not know what you are messing with. This could lead to things such as opening up videos, or it could lead to you somehow, if you were playing for a very long time, going into Windows Explorer and deleting important files. You do not want that happening. This makes me very hesitant to say whether this game could easily transition from the computer desk to the couch, because it simply is not nearly as fun an experience. Sure, with changing the controller mappings, you could come to some sort of compromise that works better, but it'll be nowhere near the great experience that this game is already on the PC. It'll be a significant compromise in playability and enjoyment. Considering this was a game that was displayed in the Steam controller trailer, this is a fairly significant disappointment to me. If the objective of the Steam controller was to move gaming from the desk to a more casual environment, such as the couch, which is what I feel like Valve is trying to do with Steam Boxes, Steam Link, and this controller, then this game feels like a failure on that objective. Time for my final big issue with the Steam controller. It needs you, or suggests you, to use Steam Big Picture Mode. Steam Big Picture Mode is a messy and unresponsive pile of rubbish. It is also a CPU hog sometimes. I've tested it about a bit. Typically games use more CPU when run through Steam Big Picture Mode. Namely, whenever it slows down and stops responding, which is pretty often for Steam Big Picture Mode, it runs into CPU issues quite a bit. If you don't like Big Picture Mode, and why would you, then this controller might be a hard sell to you. City Skylines usually uses somewhere in the range of 50 to 55% of my CPU, and I tested this the other day because I was building a city for more recording. So I looked at how much CPU I was using. It was about that. However, in Big Picture Mode, it uses somewhere more in the range of 70 to 80% of my CPU. You could notice this on my stream because it simply disabled OBS from properly streaming and turned it into a PowerPoint presentation of city pipelines. This is a massive issue. Please make Steam Big Picture Mode more CPU efficient. It is bad. Also make it not suck. It is just real bad. Either that or divorce the Steam controller from Steam Big Picture Mode entirely. Have a proper hub on regular Steam for community downloads, for controller mappings. That seems like the best way to get people to adopt your new controller Steam. All in all, this is an alright controller. It's not the best, and it is not the worst. It's capable of bringing some games, like Hotline Miami 2 or Crusader Kings 2, to the sofa if you really wanted them there. However, it seems like the more precise action and micromanagement you need in your game, less of an attractive option it becomes. Right now, I would not recommend buying it until Steam actually makes Big Picture Mode something worth looking at and using. The controller is currently in a beta phase anyway, and Steam sent out an email saying as much last week. And it is definitely feeling like a beta right now. It does have some rough edges, as I've detailed above. I would call the controller a decent, if somewhat inferior, alternative to other popular PC controllers, such as the much used DualShock 4 or the Xbox controller. It is nowhere near a disaster like I expected it to be with games like Crusader Kings 2, however it's still far from perfect. If you're remotely interested in picking this controller up, then I would at least wait a few months before pulling the trigger. An improved edition might come out some short period down the road, and you should at very least wait until it exits the beta stage it is currently in. I hope you enjoyed listening to this. This is just my basic report of what the Steam controller was like. I'll probably check back in every now and then as I get more and more used to using the Steam controller, and I'll try and let you know if I really start to feel like it is a more serious competitor than it feels right now. I'll also be sure to check in shortly before the Steam controller beta ends and they've come to a more finalised version of the controller, and I'll let you know what I think of it then. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, keep it juicy.